America is standing at a crossroads again, and this time, the smoke rising on the horizon feels eerily familiar. When Congressman James Clyburn sat down for an interview on Meet the Press, he didn't sound like a politician giving talking points. He sounded like a man sending out a warning pulled straight from the darkest chapters of American history. Asterisk, it began with a simple question. Is today's redistricting fight, the political war over voting maps, happening across the country, pushing the nation toward a dangerous repeat of its past? Clyburn didn't hesitate. He didn't soften his answer. He said yes. Entirely yes. Asterisk, because to him, this moment doesn't feel new. It feels like déjà vu from a time Americans swore they would never return to. Clyburn pointed straight back to the period after the Civil War, when Reconstruction ended, a moment when the promise of equality was slowly strangled, one law at a time. He talked about the rise of Jim Crow, about Supreme Court rulings like Plessy v. Ferguson that didn't just bend democracy. They mocked it. They hollowed it out from the inside. Asterisk, and then he said something chilling. That is what we are approaching today. Asterisk, imagine hearing that from a man who has spent his entire career studying, fighting, and living the history of civil rights in America. When someone with that kind of experience says the country is drifting backward, that's not political theater. That's a flare shot into the night sky. Asterisk, but his message didn't stop there. Because while Congress argues and parties carve out maps to protect their own power, the Supreme Court just allowed Texas to use a controversial new district map that analysts say could shift 5 seats to the Republicans in next year's elections. And the moment that happened, every state in the country started redrawing lines, redrawing power, redrawing futures. Asterisk, it's fire versus fire. And in the words of Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, when you fight fire with fire long enough, all you're left with are ashes. Asterisk, Clyburn agreed, but he added something deeper. He asked the question nobody wants to ask out loud. Are we still striving for a more perfect union? Or are we slowly making a mockery of our democracy? Asterisk, that's not the kind of line a politician usually drops on Sunday morning TV. That's the kind of line you remember later, when the news is over and the room goes quiet. Asterisk. But the interview shifted gears in a surprising way toward Michelle Obama. Last month, she said something that shook a lot of people, that America is not ready for a woman president. Some called it honest. Some called it discouraging. But almost everyone had an opinion. Asterisk, so Clyburn was asked, was she right? Asterisk, he didn't deflect. He didn't spin. He said she was absolutely correct. Asterisk, and then he added a twist. He said, yes, history proves we weren't ready. But that doesn't mean we stopped trying. Asterisk. He reminded the country of the women who've stepped into the arena anyway. Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris. Women who carried the weight of expectations on their shoulders and pushed the country forward, whether it was ready or not. Asterisk, Clyburn said, we might be in darkness right now. But his father used to tell him something powerful, that the darkest part of the night is the moment right before dawn. Asterisk, maybe. That's where America is standing. Not at the end, but at the edge of something new. Maybe the first woman president is closer than anyone realizes. But for that to happen, women have to run. They have to keep running. Even when the polls say no, even when the country hesitates, even when the system seems rigged to turn back the clock. Asterisk, because dawn never comes for a nation that stops walking toward the light. Asterisk, that's why conversations like this matter, not just for politicians, but for all of us. Redistricting, voting rights, representation, who gets counted and who gets erased. These are the battle lines of the future. And every choice, every map, every election shapes the story we tell the next generation about who we were and who we decided to become. Asterisk. So if you're here right now, listening, it's because you care about that story. And stories only survive when people fight to protect them. Asterisk, if you want to stay informed, if you want the truth behind the headlines without the noise, make sure you stick with this channel. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and join the community that refuses to look away when history starts repeating itself. Asterisk, because this is one of those moments. Asterisk, and the next chapter depends on what we do next.